Welcome to The Author Show, where we feature new authors and books, from fiction to self-help and everything in between. You'll find it all at theauthorshow.com. That's theauthorshow.com. And now let the show begin.
Hello and welcome back to the show. This is your host, Don McCauley. Today we're welcoming program author Jack Billups, and he is the author of My Vietnam, A Gift to My Daughter. Jack, how are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you.
Well, tell us a little bit about yourself, please.
I am a retired man living up in the northern part of Arizona with my wife. I owned a business, a masonry business, for 23 years, and then I became a salesman for tools for another 20 plus years. After that, I retired, and lo and behold, my daughter asked me to give her a birthday gift that got me into where I am now a writer.
So tell us about your book.
Throughout my life, I've discovered that everybody's got an uncle that was in Vietnam but never talks about it. Wives have husbands that go mum. Daughters and sons have fathers that they don't know anything about concerning their time in Vietnam. So my story is satisfying the request of my daughter to learn of my experiences. So it's a memoir. It goes into my experiences as a grunt in Vietnam. However, I peel off in appropriate occasions to bring in the historical context of the baby boom generation. That was important to help younger generations understand what it was like growing up in the 50s and the 60s and the influence that the greatest generation had on our minds. The storyline continues to where after the memoir is over, my daughter is satisfied and we make a return trip back to present-day Vietnam, just my daughter and I.
Now, who did you write your book for specifically? Who's your target audience?
Well, initially, I wrote it for my daughter. However, once we decided that this needed to become a book, and my Uncle Bill, he's 96 years old, he read the memoirs and said, Jack, you've got to make this into a book. I said, okay, well, then now this is not just about my daughter. It's got to be about the wives, the sons, and the daughters who really never understood what it was like for their father. And for the Vietnam veteran, there's a story of reconciliation in this book. It's just for everybody, men and women. In fact, women are buying my book over men 4-1.
Now, could you say there's any type of minimum reading age? I mean, would this be appropriate for like a grade school child?
Well, there is tender stuff in there, so I would say maybe 18 and above, yes. Below that, no.
Now, could you say there's any type of central message in your book?
I was definitely transparent in my experiences over there, but it didn't get vivid.
So what's the most important idea you're sharing in your book that's really going to add value to the reader's life?
The daughter-father relationship. I don't believe there's not a father out there that doesn't have a daughter that he truly loves, but over the years there may have been some occasions that created distance, and that was certainly my case. So I believe for any daughter, for any father, for any parent, for any son that wanted a closer relationship with their parent, especially one from Vietnam, this book will definitely take you in the right direction and help make sense of it all.
So if you could compare your book with any book out there we might already be familiar with, which book would it be and why?
Well, it's a simple memoir in the beginning. Of course, I took it much further than that. There is one book out there. It's by Glenn Haney, a 19-year-old, and he said the title of the book is When I Turned 19. It's similar to mine in where he describes his life as a young teenager. He reaches 19, and then he ends up in the jungles of Vietnam. And I was going through the chapters, and very much like mine, he takes you through the battlefield, the R&R, and other things like that. So that would be the closest book that I could compare mine to.
So how did you feel when your daughter requested your memoir?
Oh, boy, that was something else. It was November. My daughter's birthday's in November, and I always struggle to find an appropriate gift. I'm not good at that. So Naomi, my daughter, calls me up and says, hey, Dad, look, instead of giving me a gift, why don't you sit down with me and tell me about your Vietnam experiences? So I just went into a deep pause and started going, how do I do this? I told her, look, let me write my memoirs. I'll get back with you when I'm finished. It was different. I never expected her to want to know about my experiences there, but it also made me realize that there's maybe even millions of daughters and sons out there who desire to understand what their fathers went through during the war in Vietnam.
And what was your reaction when she said she wanted to go to Vietnam?
That one too. I mean, that left me flat-footed. It was more of an emotional response than sharing the stories. So, yeah, I'm on the phone with her. She says, Dad, let's go back to Vietnam, just you and me. So, yeah, in the beginning, it was sort of daunting. That's a big thing. You know, I'm not a young man anymore, and to go back to a place I was 50 years past, and my experiences there were not too pleasant. Yeah, it took me a while to digest it, but then, I pondered it, and I wanted so badly to have an experience with my daughter that I finally called her up and said, yeah, you know what, let's do this. I didn't really care what the outcome would be or how it would affect me. I just wanted to be with my daughter and return to Vietnam and let her have a good time.
What ultimately drove you as you were writing this memoir?
Well, initially it was to satisfy my daughter's request. I wanted to just make it perfect. And beyond that, I knew I had the opportunity to leave this for my offspring, an inheritance of sorts for the Billups family. In addition to that, I'm the kind of person that, if I have a challenge before me, I don't like people telling me I can't do it. And so I did it and I didn't stop. The results were good and I'm very happy how it all turned out.
What did you want to accomplish when writing this book?
I wanted to accomplish something further than most Vietnam books. The majority of Vietnam memoirs are about blood, guts, battles, and how it was so horrible and how much death and maiming one experienced in Vietnam. Well, I certainly witnessed that, but I knew there was an element that the family of Vietnam veterans did not understand. And that was every aspect of what a combat veteran experienced in Vietnam. Not just battle, but going through the jungle, fighting the elements, fighting the psychological warfare of knowing that those back in America were against the war and even shaming those who participated in the war, and how that would affect a combat veteran wanting to fight. It was a lot different than World War II. I mean, there was a cause there. There was a dedication there. Everybody was one. But not so with the Vietnam infantrymen. So it was a battle psychologically, and I don't think a lot of Americans, sons, daughters, wives, mothers, really understood that battle that was in our minds as we sacrificed everything, possibly, to obey our country, to be patriotic, but we knew this wasn't the same as our father's war.
So what did you experience emotionally as you traveled through Vietnam?
Well, it was a different experience. I was amazed. I was apprehensive, naturally. However, immediately on the first day, we were emotionally embraced by the Vietnamese we had contact with. I mean, the respect, the honor. I mean, it was just amazing, and it just melted my heart from day one all the way to the last day, which was Veterans Day, ironically. Yeah, I was in amazement. So as we traveled through Vietnam, our tour guide took us to many different places of historical value. My daughter was just floating above the ground, and my joy, of course, was watching her and knowing that we were having such a good time together, a time that she would never forget. It brought me a lot of satisfaction and joy.
Now, you mentioned that the highlight of your trip was when you arrived at what you called the Black Virgin Mountain. Why was that meaningful?
My daughter and I traveled from Da Nang down to Saigon and then traveled up to the Tay Ninh province, the area where I was stationed. We ended up going to the base of the Black Virgin Mountain. This is where I did combat and had all my experiences in Vietnam. We go into the parking lot, and lo and behold, it's now a tourist attraction. I mean, I just had a hard time reconciling this, but in the end, we ended up going up the tram to the very top of this mountain. And my daughter and I walked out and settled into a little cutout on the trail. As I looked over the valley, I visualized where LZ Grant was, and I almost imagined a firefight going on where The artillery started kicking into action from LZ Grant, and the Cobras were firing down into the jungle where the 3rd Platoon was having a firefight with the NVA. So it was quite an experience. I pulled back and we returned to the tram after a set of Vietnamese kids requested selfies with me, which stunned me. They really showed me a lot of respect and honor. So I get down to the base of the mountain, we take off back home, but that experience of going back to my old battlegrounds was something else.
So what's been your most rewarding experience since publishing your book?
Well, like an artist, the response of the public. I really didn't know how effective my book would be or how well received it would be, but then I started getting some reviews on Amazon, and one of them was from the wife of a Vietnam veteran. I'm actually just going to read it. It's titled A Beautiful Journey to Healing. She says, "We listened to the interview author on the Mike Boyle show. My husband, a Vietnam veteran, was eager to read the book. The author delivered on our hopes for a healing response to what our boys faced over there. My husband usually can't read much Vietnam War material due to his PTSD. He read this in just a few days. It was that good. Our thanks to the author for the undertaking of this topic and telling his story. Kitty Meeker." So as time went by, I kept getting 5-star reviews. I'm just going, well, this is a good sign. Apparently I accomplished my goal to make this of value to the public.
So in your opinion, who should buy your book?
Wives of Vietnam veterans that never really understood what their husbands experienced. Sons and daughters for the same reason. I mentioned earlier that everybody's got an uncle who went to Vietnam and they never talk about it. I say that everybody's got some kind of a connection to a Vietnam veteran that really doesn't understand what they went through psychologically and emotionally. So a son can understand his father, a daughter can understand her father, a wife, a mother can understand what it was really like for a veteran who went through the combat situations in Vietnam. However, for the Vietnam veteran, there's a message of reconciliation that comes at the end of the book. There's a lot of veterans that are bitter. They never could put the pieces together. And I reconciled my Vietnam with the Vietnam of the present. And for those Vietnam veterans that never could, can't let it go, etc., this book will help.
Do you have a website?
myvietnambook.com.
And could you spell your name for us, please?
Jack, Jack, Billups, Billups.
Well, this has been just great. Our guest today has been Jack Billups, and he is the author of My Vietnam, A Gift to My Daughter. Jack, thanks very much for being with us today.
You're welcome.
This is Don McCauley wrapping up another edition of The Author Show. Go out there, buy the book today, and please share this interview with your friends so that they too have the opportunity to discover our guests and their work. The Author Show can be accessed at any time at theauthorshow.com. Selected interviews can also be found on major platforms like Amazon Fire TV, the Roku channel, iHeartRadio, Spotify, Amazon Music, and many more. And whether you're an author who would like to be featured or a reader in search of new books to read, The Author Show is a great place to start. Check us daily as we continue to introduce wonderful authors of very interesting books on The Author Show.
Thanks for listening to The Author Show. Find out more about authors and their work at theauthorshow.com. Theauthorshow.com. Tune in next time to another great author on The Author Show.